Believe it or not, there are Dobermans out there who live to 14, 15, even 16 years of age, and even beyond that. In fact, we recently actually celebrated a Doberman named Katie's 17th birthday party on our Facebook page with this post here. Now, Katie turned 17 years old and celebrated surrounded by her loving family and friends. So, what are the owners of these Dobermans who are living this long actually doing differently than what you're doing with your Doberman? Well, today, we're gonna tell you. We're finally revealing the results of a study we conducted here at Doberman Planet where we surveyed over 500 owners of some of the longest living Dobermans around. We had them complete just a really in-depth questionnaire. Then we crunched all the numbers, and now you're about to find out what these owners are doing differently than you. So over 84% had this in their home. So don't forget, you're only getting this type of amazing, one-of-a-kind, and completely original research into the Doberman breed right here at Doberman Planet. Okay guys, so originally we had over 566 people surveyed for dogs that were 12 years of age or older. And at the beginning, when we made this study, we kind of decided that if we had over 100 results of dogs who were over 14 years of age, then we just focus in on them. And because that's the most extreme old age Dobermans. And we actually had enough respondents, that's what we did. This is all data for dogs that are 14 years or older. Okay, so our first question we asked was Doberman sex. And if you look at it, a huge portion of them were female. That's actually really interesting to me. 63.4% were female. Significantly more than half. I don't know if female dogs are living longer. That's super interesting to me. So the next one was, how old was your Doberman when they died? This is kind of just shows you the breakdown. We had 14 years of age was obviously the biggest group of these people who answered, then 15, and then some of them, 14.6% of them in this survey were over 16 years. That's pretty interesting. Okay, now we're getting to some good stuff here. The first one that we have is what category below best describes your Doberman's genetic lines. Now this is owner reported, right? So this is what the owner believes that their dog is. Look at that, American pet or informal. Huge slice of the pie here, huge slice. The next biggest slice was I don't know, followed by American show at 12%. Actually, we don't even see the Europeans represented on these old age dogs until the fourth category, which is European working, which is 11% of these dogs that live 14 years of older. That's really interesting to me. I don't know what kind of conclusions you can draw from this. Are Americans living longer? We actually did a really interesting interview with Sophie Liu, the co-founder of the Doberman Diversity Project, who actually answered that question very precisely, and that should be popping up in the corner of your screen. You can go take a look at that if you really want to see like what varieties are living how long. It's pretty interesting. She talks a lot about genetic variety there. The next question, what age were they spayed or neutered? This one is huge for you guys. I know a lot of you out there are sitting there yelling at your screen right now because this is a passionate one. A lot of people say never to spay or neuter your dog. Some people say to only do it after 2 years of age. Here's what we got. Of these dogs that lived this long, the biggest were 1 to 2 years of age and under 1 year of age. Followed by the third was never. Now, something interesting about these results, this doesn't necessarily mean that the sweet spot is 1 to 2 years of age. And if you neuter your dog there, then your dog has the best chance of living over 14 years of age. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could just mean that most Doberman owners do it between 1 to 2 years of age. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's move on to some of the exercise questions. A lot of people want to know this and how it affects their Doberman. How much exercise does your Doberman typically get per day? 1 to 2 hours was the huge majority, 48%. And then as far as the intensity of the exercise, that was the next question. Moderate intensity was the biggest slice of the pie here. So that's actually interesting to me because I was curious if high intensity, like high energy stuff was maybe getting their heart rate higher, maybe that was causing them to live longer, or was keeping it kind of mild and kind of easy going. Was that maybe letting their hearts, last longer? I don't know. So this is why I threw this question in there. But how would you describe your approach to exercising your Doberman during their most active years? So should you push your Doberman? Should you really push them into exercising if they're not feeling it? Should you just give them opportunities to do it, but then not really push it? I don't know the answer to this. So I was really curious for these dogs that lived over 14 years of age. The biggest slice, look at this. The biggest slice was I let my Doberman exercise as and when they wanted. The owners weren't really encouraging exercise, and they certainly weren't promoting a non-strenuous life with little exercise. That was only 6.7% of these dogs. So it looks like letting the Doberman be in charge a little bit about how much exercise they get might be the sweet spot. Let's move on. The activities. I'm really curious about this. The activity levels are moderate and the duration and so on, but I want to know what types of activities. Is there a certain type of activity that these dogs are really, really akin to that's really helping their bodies? But keep in mind, some of these activities are just the most popular Doberman owners in general, i.e. walking. Take a look at this graph. Walking is definitely the most common, followed by playing with other dogs. That's interesting because there's mental stimulation involved there too when you play with another dog. So that's interesting. That was number 2, even above self-play. And then followed by general off-leash play, fetch or retrieving, running and jogging, so on. So people were allowed to select up to 3, their dog's favorite 3 activities as a response. And that's really interesting. Okay, did your Doberman live and interact with other dogs in the house? Another one I was really going for how much mental stimulation plays into this. And I was really curious to see if this had any kind of connection to these long living Dobermans. Take a look at this, guys. Holy moly, 73.2%. Blows my mind. 73.2% have this situation at home. Absolutely, like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. 73.2 have at least one other dog at home. And actually, if you add that to the yellow category, no, but they did live with other animals that they interacted with, not dogs. That's over 84% had this situation. So over 84% had this in their home. One little caveat here, and this is important, is mental stimulation of another animal in the house. Does this have something to do with longevity? Does this make them want to live more for some reason because maybe there's an extra desire there because they have this companion, or life's just happier for them and happier dogs live longer? I don't know. But what could skew these results is, are Doberman owners just more likely to own other animals and other dogs? If that's true, then it could skew this. I think, though, that these results are so far past that. I mean, we're talking over 84% have at least one other animal. I think it kind of goes beyond that. I think there's really something there. This is, in my opinion, one of the most compelling graphs in this study. Run that through your own logic filter and tell me what you think in the comments below. Okay, how integrated was your Doberman with your daily activities? Not surprising. Big portion, highly integrated, slept close to me, went with me everywhere, always stuck by my side, etc. That's 54%, 54.3. And then moderately integrated was 42.7. Look at that. Independently and mostly did their own thing. Only 3% of Dobermans who were independent mostly did their own thing. Not a surprise to me. What type of meals did your Doberman eat the most? That was the next question on this study. I was actually fairly surprised by this too. Kibble. Only 24.4%, less than a quarter, ate only kibble for most of their life. A huge portion had mostly kibble, but mixed with a few of my own additions. So that's very common, Doberman owners mixing in some fresh foods in with their kibble. Some rice, some chicken, some just different things. The green section is fresh foods, like pretty much entirely, like they cook their own huge fresh meals for their dogs. I really think not a lot of owners have that kind of dedication. I think it does amazing things for the dog, but that takes a lot of dedication to cook all that. And then raw diet was only 4.3%. That's amazing to me, simply because the raw diet people often tout how their dogs that eat only raw are like the longest living dogs. And if you want your dog to live forever, you should eat only raw foods, uncooked. That's not really reflected here in this study. What additives or supplements? This really was interesting to me too, because people claim to have these supplements that do just wonders. Well, let's look at what the most common is with these old dogs. Omega fatty acids, by far the most common. which is great, you know, for their brain development. It's great for their fur and their coat, even helps their joints. Glucosamine is the next one. That's definitely something that helps with joints. Pumpkin after that, multivitamins, followed by chondroitin, other probiotics, and so on. And you can see the numbers there. One thing I thought that stood out to me, which is easy to miss on this graph if you're not looking, 73 respondents didn't answer this question, left it blank. I made it an option to leave it blank because not everybody gives their dog supplements. So the number one is omega fatty acids, had 35 of the 150 some odd dogs. 35 of them gave omega fatty acids, but 73, over double, gave nothing at all. So I don't know how much supplements play a role here. Okay, now we're starting to get into some of the breeder stuff and the genetics questions, which I always find interesting as well because, you know, there's been a lot to say about some issues there. Okay, did you receive genetic health tests from your breeder or adoption organization? No, 81% didn't receive health tests from wherever they got their Doberman from. Why is that? Are a lot of them adopting? And maybe that's why? So let's look at the next one. How would you describe your dog's breeder? The biggest portion is my dog was adopted. I don't know about the breeder, 31%. In number two place is a backyard or small-time breeder with someone with not a lot of breeding experience. And finally, the third position with 20% of these dogs was a long-time breeder with a good reputation. Super, super interesting to me. The biggest portion of these dogs that lived over 14 were adopted. That's crazy to me. There's been a theory, and I've heard it many times with Dobermans, that sometimes the adopted dogs or the dogs from inexperienced breeders or accidental matings between dogs that aren't intentional, sometimes those live the longest because they tend to have the most genetic diversity. Whereas the long-time breeders with good reputations, a lot of times they'll pick the top of the line male and the top of the line female. Well, those have all been picked from top of the lines and they've been picked from top of the lines, which is a very limited genetic pool. So they don't have many options for mates. I thought this was super, super interesting and does add a little bit of credence, a little bit of extra ammo for those people who say adopted dogs and accidental mating dogs sometimes have the most genetic diversity. And we know that more genetic diversity tends to equal longer longevity. So speaking of what you feed your Doberman and how it pertains to health, I think there really isn't much disagreement at all out there in the scientific world that an animal's diet has a lot to do with their overall health. And in this study that we did, less than a quarter of owners of the longest living Dobermans fed their dog just straight kibble. Over 75% of them turned to something else that they believed was better for their dog's health. Guys, this is why it's really a good idea if you can feed your Doberman the way you feed yourself. Fresh foods, not baked, dry, chunks of processed kibble. And this is why we always recommend all these fresh human-grade meals here at Doberman Planet. Ollie's food is made from real clean ingredients with no fillers, byproducts, or artificial preservatives. They just take a very different, much more careful approach than you expect from most dog food companies when it comes to preparing these meals. For example, they gently cook their meals at like a really low temperature to better preserve the nutrients, which means that your dog is getting the absolute best in terms of the quality of their food. Plus, their meals are formulated with actual veterinary nutritionists, so you can trust that your dog's specific nutritional needs are being pretty well met. Another huge plus is that Ollie delivers right to your door. So not only are you feeding your Doberman fresh, human-grade food, but you're also making your life a little easier too. And right now, Ollie's offering a special deal just for Doberman Planet viewers. You can get 60% off your first box by using the link and the coupon code in the description down below. Yes, they are the sponsor of this video today, and we're very thankful that they are. There's a reason why we picked Ollie to partner with, because they're just awesome and their food's great. And 60% off, that's a huge chunk off for you to try out a meal designed specifically for your dog's health. Okay, a few quick notes here, guys. First, correlation does not imply causation. So what I mean by that is when something correlates, it doesn't mean it's what causes it. For example, when we see that almost 60% of these owners with the longest living Dobermans fed their dog 2 meals a day, that doesn't necessarily mean that feeding two meals a day directly leads to a super long life. It's far more likely that feeding 2 meals a day is most often recommended for adult dogs in general, and so most people do just that. If it applies to most Dobermans anyway, it probably applies to this group of the longest living Dobermans too. Hopefully that makes sense to you. It doesn't mean that 2 meals a day is, the secret to a long life. So just keep that in mind. Keep in mind also that sometimes you're just kind of given the hand you're dealt when it comes to your dog's DNA. And no matter what, they just won't live to an old age. And truly, it really does happen to the absolute best owners of Dobermans anywhere in the world. It happens to them all the time. It doesn't mean that we can't support our Dobermans in the best way possible in various aspects of their life, especially in the ones that we can influence. Now, if you want to take your time and really read through these study results yourself, it's actually really interesting stuff in my opinion. Just go take a look in the description down below this video. I'll put a link to the PDF down there for you to take a look at, and you can read through everything yourself, including our analysis at the end as well. We try to really make it really simple for anyone to kind of get a handle on just by looking through it. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys, and learning even more about this fantastically unique breed of dog that's really just unlike any other breed out there. And remember to support us and the work we do, and support your Doberman's health also by checking out our sponsor, Ollie, who makes a pretty amazing top-of-line fresh meals for your Doberman. The link is in the description down below. Keep being great Doberman breed ambassadors. Spread the word. Don't forget to share this video too. Some people will find a lot of use out of it. And of course, like always, I'll see you next time.